Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a really fantastic one lined up for you today. We are diving deep into a remarkable piece of ancient text to explore the completely timeless dynamics of political and spiritual power. Specifically, we're looking at this profound philosophical exchange that takes place in the Dwaita woods. It's a story that actually maps out the ultimate relationship between raw physical might and the deep intellectual wisdom you need to actually guide it. If you've ever wondered how the great leaders throughout history managed to harness immense energy without, letting it completely destroy them, well, this ancient discourse holds some incredibly valuable answers. So let's jump right in. Listen to this absolutely striking quote spoken by the Rishi Vaka. Like an elephant in battle without his driver, a Kshatriya destitute of Brahmanas decreaseth in strength. Just picture that for a second. An elephant in battle is a force of pure, almost unimaginable destruction and power, right? But without a skilled driver, someone with the actual vision and training to direct that colossal energy, the elephant's effectiveness completely plummets. It becomes erratic, and honestly, it's probably a danger to its own side. This quote perfectly sets up the core theme of our explainer today. Raw warrior power, represented here by the Kshatriya, absolutely requires the steadying, wise direction of a spiritual and intellectual advisor, the Brahmana. Without that, you just can't maintain your strength. To really appreciate the weight of this philosophy, we first need to understand where this is all going down. Part 1. Setting the sacred scene in the Dwaita woods.
The source text paints this incredibly vivid juxtaposition. On one hand, you have these deep spiritual customs. The nearby lake is just resounding with sacred Vedic recitations, and the beautiful hymns of the Yajus, the Riks, and the Samas are literally filling the air. It's described as a second region of Brahma. But then, cutting right through those delightful hymns, is the martial twang of the bows belonging to the sons of Pritha. And here's the thing, it isn't a clash. The text explicitly calls this union of spiritual and warrior customs highly beautiful. It's this living, breathing ecosystem where deep contemplation and serious combat readiness exist in total harmony.
And this perfectly balanced environment brings us to a very specific moment in time. It's the Homa time. Evening has fallen over the woods, the sacred fires have all been lit by ascetic Brahmanas devoted to their rigid vows. Imagine the glow of those fires reflecting against the gathering night. It's in this deeply atmospheric, sacred setting, surrounded by the absolute foremost sages of the era, descendants of Bhrigu, Vasishta, and Agastya, that Rishi Vaka steps forward to address Yudhishthira, the chief of the Kurus. The stage is perfectly set for what is essentially a masterclass in leadership. So, how does all this build into Rishi Vaka's central thesis on society's energies? Let's check out Part 2, the ultimate power alliance between wisdom and might. Rishi Vaka drops this phenomenal metaphor from nature. Brahma energy, that intellectual, spiritual power, is likened to fire. But fire on its own, it can sometimes just kind of smolder. Kshatriya might, the physical warrior energy, is compared to the wind, and wind on its own just blows things around. But when you combine them, when the wind actually aids the fire, you get an unstoppable force that consumes the forest, or in this context, consumes all enemies. Vaka is telling Yudhishthira that when spiritual energy and warrior might gather force together, literally nothing can stand in their way. But Vaka is also super specific about the kind of driver this elephant actually needs. A king who wants to successfully rule the world for a length of days needs a Brahmana who isn't just conversant with religion, but is equally conversant with worldly affairs. They can't just be some detached philosopher living in the clouds, They have to understand how the real world operates. Furthermore, they must be freed from passion and folly. So the crucial point here is that the ideal advisor offers objective, clear-eyed counsel. It's got to be grounded in both moral truth and practical reality, totally untouched by impulsive emotions. Now, to prove that this isn't just nice theoretical advice, but actually a matter of life and death, Rishi Vaka introduces a high-stakes cautionary tale. Part 3, the tale of King Vali. This timeline perfectly maps out the dramatic rise and the catastrophic fall of the Ashura king Vali, the son of Virachana. In Era 1, Vali does everything right. He cherishes his subjects, practices duties leading to salvation, and relies entirely on his wise Brahmana advisors. Because of this, we move to Era 2. His desires are gratified, his wealth is inexhaustible, and he literally obtains the whole earth. He reaches the absolute pinnacle of power. But then, Era 3 happens. Vali arrogantly shifts his behavior
and begins to practice wrong against those very same advisors. The result? Era 4, utter destruction. His inexhaustible wealth just vanishes. The very moment he severed the alliance between his physical power and their guiding wisdom, he fell. Which brings us to this incredibly stark, uncompromising warning from the text. The earth with all her wealth never adores long as her lord, a Kshatriya, living without a Brahmana. It's a profound statement on legitimacy, really. The earth, girt by the sea, only bows to a ruler who is taught their duties by a spiritual guide. Power without moral and intellectual grounding is just inherently unstable. It might conquer for a minute, like Vali did, but the earth is eventually going to reject it. It simply cannot endure. Having established the theory and the historical precedent, let's pivot back to some direct, practical advice. Part 4, a blueprint for rulers. Vaka actually brings back that vivid fire and wind metaphor to really cement the concept in Yudhishthira's mind. As fire becoming mightier with the wind consumeth straw and wood, so kings with Brahmanas consume all foes. The text explicitly states that the Brahmanas' sight is without compare, and the Kshatriya's might is unparalleled. Sight and might. When you combine unparalleled vision with unparalleled action, the whole earth cheerfully yields to that combination. Notice that. It's not a forced submission. The earth cheerfully yields because the power is applied correctly and justly. And what does applying power correctly actually look like on a day-to-day basis? Well, Vaka outlines 3 incredibly practical outcomes for an intelligent ruler who keeps counsel with a Brahmana of reputation, wisdom, and experience. Step 1, you gain what you do not currently have. That's strategic acquisition. Step 2, you increase what you already have, economic and territorial growth. But step 3, and this is perhaps the most important one and the one rulers most often get wrong, spending what you have on proper objects and persons. It's all about resource allocation guided by wisdom. You don't just hoard wealth, and you definitely don't waste it on vanity projects. You distribute it where it actually does the most good. Now, the really beautiful resolution to this whole discourse is that Yudhishthira isn't some rogue ruler who needs to be scolded. Yudhishthira already embodies this ideal. He is surrounded by legendary sages right there in the woods. Figures like Dwaita, Narada, Jamadagnya, Kasyapa, and Sanaka. After Rishi Vaka finishes his speech praising Yudhishthira's high regard for Brahmans, this entire illustrious gathering worships and adores Yudhishthira. The sheer scale of respect he commands is entirely because he respects them. He values their sight just as much as he values his own might. And what's the ultimate reward for following this philosophical blueprint? It is a fame that blazes in the 3 worlds. The text tells us Yudhishthira was adored by these wise men just like Rishis adore Purandara, which is another name for Indra, the king of gods, in heaven. By perfectly balancing the twang of the bow with the recitation of the Vedas, by ensuring the wind always supports the fire, Yudhishthira achieves this legendary status that mere conquest could literally never buy. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a thought directly inspired by our very first metaphor. Look, we all have elements of raw power in our own lives, right? Our energy, our resources, our influence, our ambition, that's our elephant. But the text is asking us to critically examine the guidance system of that power. So if raw power is the elephant, who is driving yours? What wisdom, what principles, or what advisors are steering your actions? Because as we've learned from the Dwaita woods, power without profound vision doesn't conquer the world. It ultimately consumes itself. Think about that as you go through your week. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this incredible text and keep seeking that perfect balance between might and wisdom.